The content in this video is for general educational use. It does not represent political opinions or judgments about any country, culture, or government. Information is based on publicly available sources and may be summarized or simplified. Viewers should verify details through multiple sources.
Today, we're going to dissect how a political idea, a promise for a perfect world, can be used to systematically take apart a society, piece by piece, from the inside out. We are looking at the anatomy of the Khmer Rouge's ideology.
And it's so important that we understand this right from the start. This is not just a lesson about the past. The sources we're looking at today frame this entire story as a cautionary tale, a warning about how quickly utopian dreams can turn into unimaginable nightmares.
So where does a story like this even begin? It begins with a single, powerful idea, a concept of truly breathtaking and terrifying simplicity. They called it Year Zero.
Now, just try to wrap your head around how radical this is. This wasn't about reform. It was about complete and total erasure. The goal was to sever the country from everything it had ever been, its culture, its history, its memories, to build a brand new society on the ashes of the old one.
The sales pitch, if you can even call it that, was for a kind of utopia, a return to a mythical past, a pure society with no cities, no Western influence, no social classes at all. In this new world, everyone would be a simple farmer, equal in every way. That was the promise.
So that's the idea on paper. But what happened when that abstract idea met reality? How did this vision of utopia become what survivors call a nationwide prison?
Well, the first step happened almost overnight. On April 17, 1975, the Khmer Rouge entered the capital, Phnom Penh, and forced millions of people out into the countryside at gunpoint. Hospitals were emptied out. Think about that. Patients literally pushed out of their beds and onto the roads. The cities, they said, were a source of evil.
And here's how they started turning people against each other. Almost immediately, they divided the entire population into two groups. If you were from a city, you were new people. You were considered corrupt and enemy. But if you were a peasant from the countryside, you were base people, the pure revolutionary core. And that simple label, it was literally the difference between life and death.
You could see the ideology on people's very bodies. Individuality was a threat, so it had to be eliminated. Everyone was made to wear the exact same black pajamas. Personal style, expression, even a bit of color, all of it was erased in the name of absolute conformity.
And it just went deeper and deeper. The regime took a hammer to every pillar of society. Money was gone, markets closed, schools, hospitals shut down, religion was completely forbidden. The whole social and economic fabric of the country, it was intentionally and systematically destroyed.
But maybe the most chilling piece of this whole social experiment was the attack on the most basic human connection we have, the family itself.
Your loyalty had to be completely rewired. The family was replaced with anchor, which just means the organization. This anonymous, faceless, all-powerful state was now your only family. Children were taught that anchor was their true mother and father. Any other loyalty was a betrayal.
I want you to just let this one sink in. They actually invented a crime for basic human emotion. If you missed your mother or your child, they called it familyism. It was considered a thought crime against the revolution. And if you showed that love, that affection, it could get you executed.
So, if love is a crime and the family is an enemy, what does survival even look like? What does it feel like day to day to live under a logic that's built entirely on cruelty? This quote from a survivor, it says everything. Survival became a performance. You had to learn how to make your face a blank mask, how to make your eyes show nothing. It was a world where empathy was a death sentence.
Just think about that for a second. How do you do that? What does it take psychologically to train yourself to project absolute nothingness every single day just to have a chance to live until tomorrow?
And it wasn't just about showing no emotion. It was about showing nothing of who you were before. Any sign of education was a threat. Doctors, teachers, artists, they were systematically hunted. The simple fact of wearing glasses could be enough to mark you as an intellectual and get you killed.
And if you want to understand the cold mathematics behind all of this common slogan is it. It's not about hate. It's about a cold, pragmatic dehumanization. People stopped being people. They were just assets or liabilities. A human life had absolutely no inherent value.
And this is the result of that logic. This is the final sum. At a minimum, 1.7 million people were dead in less than 4 years.
And when you break that number down, you see something terrifying. Yes, executions were common, but the vast majority of deaths, about a quarter of the entire population of Cambodia, came from starvation, disease, and overwork. You have to understand, starvation wasn't a failure of the system, it was a tool of the system.
So what's left after that kind of devastation? What grows in the ruins? The legacy, it turns out, is found not just in the mass graves, but in the silence of those who made it through. Remember that skill for survival? Learning to show nothing? This quote from a Cambodian elder shows the cost of learning that lesson too well. Silence became a habit so deeply ingrained that, for decades, many survivors couldn't even talk about what happened, not even to their own families. But that's not the end of the story. Because even inside that silence, life started to return, in small, quiet acts of resilience. Orphans began the long search for any living relatives. Artists started to teach the traditional songs and dances the regime had banned. And eventually, people began to speak, sharing their testimony to build a foundation for memory and for justice.
So in the end, this history leaves us with a profound and, frankly, an unsettling question. The search for a perfect world in Cambodia required the absolute destruction of what it means to be human, and it stands as a permanent warning for what happens when any idea, any ideology, becomes more valuable than a single human life.